Hi, I'm Zoe with Paranormal Extraction, and we have Monique Rebelle on today with her best-selling book, Transcendence Calling, The Power of Kundalini Rising and Spiritual Enlightenment. We're going to be talking about something metaphysical today, and I'm really, really excited to have her on here. I have read her book. It's excellent, and you can find it on Amazon, and it's actually the best-selling book right now. So let's go meet Monique, and I am so excited. Hi, Monique. How are you today?
Zoe. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on here. And I have your book right here alongside of me, and I was showing it in the beginning. And beautiful cover, by the way. I love that.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I read the book, everybody, and it didn't take me very long. I thought it was going to take me longer because it's so good. And her story in the beginning is really, really good. And then towards the end, she really gets into the meat of Transcendence Calling. And I just want to let you know that I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. Here it is again, Amazon, and it's the best-selling book. So, Monique, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book? I mean, I know about your book, but you're the one that I spoke to before that will explain to everybody about what this is all about.
Right, sure. Okay, let's start maybe with the fact that my experience I write about was spontaneous. That means that I didn't know anything about what was going to happen. I didn't know the title of my book, the subtitle is The Power of Kundalini Rising and Spiritual Enlightenment. And I didn't know anything about that when the experience happened to me.
Right. I mean, you were actually in the bathtub, as I remember, when this all happened, and
Yes.
And you were going through a very hard time in your life. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So I was born in Poland, and my parents were actors. My father was not. I didn't grow up with my father. I grew up with my mother, and I had a not very good relationship with her. At some point, I left Poland when I was 19, and I always wanted to be an artist. My grandma was an artist, and I actually wanted to follow my parents' footsteps, but I was not allowed to do that. My mother forbade me to learn music, singing, dancing, which just sounds strange, I know, but that's how it was. And so I left Poland on my own and went to England first, to London, and I lived for years. I lived this starving artist type of life, having odd jobs and trying to keep the ends together for years. It was really tough on me. And then at some point, my Polish boyfriend, who stayed in Poland even though we were to leave together, he came to visit me, and I got pregnant, and it was the wrong time to have a child, but I just had my daughter. That's the way I thought it has to be. So I had my daughter, and then it happened over time that because we split with the father of my daughter was left in Poland. I actually took her to Poland at some point so she knows her father. And then the whole solidarity movement, as you can tell, it was years ago. That was when the military coup happened in Poland, and I couldn't get my daughter with me, and then my mother took her without letting me know. So for years I had this big conflict. I just need to make the story shorter here. I had a big conflict within me. I thought I did the best I could, but I felt really a lot of guilt, and I thought always that I was going to be able to be with my daughter if I was able to support myself well, if I was financially able to do that. And for years it was a struggle. And I had shows of my artwork. I was accomplished artist, and still I wasn't able to really have the base to be with my daughter. But then later I decided, no matter what, I'm going to take my daughter with me. And then by then my daughter didn't want to come with me because my mother simply made her stay with her. And that was the biggest deal for me as far as getting really depressed over time, even though my artwork was, as I said, I was a very prolific artist, and I did fine as far as that goes, but I had this conflict of not being able to survive well as an artist and not being able to be with my child, and I was getting more and more depressed. And it was in Los Angeles when I really became suicidal. I had another experience before that, before the major Kundalini rising experience that I will explain in a moment. But I had another experience before that, a few years before, which changed my artwork a lot, and made me see through to another dimension, which was a totally abstract dimension, and that had to do with the subconscious practices that I was doing in order to keep on working and not being distracted by my own depression, but by my own emotions. I did these practices that allowed me to keep on working on my art. So at the time when I decided to commit suicide, I was on my way to get razor blades, and I stopped by the bathroom because I thought that maybe water is going to soothe me, and maybe I'm going to put off that idea of committing suicide. And so that's what I did. And so I got in the tub, and I just simply collapsed. I had such a strong, incredibly strong hatred towards myself, and the sense of violence. I wanted to end my life right then. And so it was a fight at first with my mind telling me that I have to get out of the tub and go and get those razor blades and do what I really need to do, what I have to do, what I should do, what's the only right thing to do. And so I tried to, so another part of me was fighting with that idea that I have to commit suicide. And as I did subconsciously my practices for years in order to be able to continue painting, that time I did that one practice of separating the emotion from the mind, from the thoughts. And I was able to focus on my emotion and figure out what it was, name it, see through it, and then step out of it. I'll describe that practice later, but at this point, I just want, yes?
No, I said right. I remember you speaking about this, but I'm really glad that you're speaking about, the suicide and everything, because right now the number one, the highest suicide rate is right now. And a lot of people, need to hear the story on what happened to you and how you pulled yourself out of it. So continue on, because it's a great story. I think a lot of people need to hear.
Yes, I agree. That exercise is very important. So I was able to see what it was. I called it depression, and I was able to move myself away from it. And at that point, I found myself in the space of neutrality. I called it later emptiness. And this is one of the first steps towards spiritual enlightenment. The ability to find that space of emptiness. I didn't know anything about that's what it was. I just did it subconsciously, and then I still could not calm my mind down. My mind was still telling me, get up and go, you have to do it. This is the only thing this is the only right thing to do. You have to do it. And at some point, I just kept on going back to the mistakes I made and try to figure out what they were and what to do about them. But there was nothing I could do about them. They were all in the past. It was all things that already happened. I couldn't turn the time back.
Right.
Yeah, so I agreed. I surrendered my mind. I agreed to whatever it was saying, and I just was there in that tub. I was there for maybe half an hour altogether, maybe a little more. I was there, and I had my eyes closed, and then I made the decision to get up and do what I thought I had to do. And I opened my eyes, and then I saw something that was really scary. I got terrified, and what it was that there was a tube of rainbow light floating right in front of me on the background of the white tub. And it was just a tube like this, and it had this beautiful rainbow colors, and it was moving slowly, kind of dancing. It was so beautiful. And of course, it was something that was completely out of this world. It was not some kind of a special effect that I would get in the bathtub at that time.
Right, so it wasn't light coming in through the window or anything like that. It was, you checked all that.
Not at all. And I knew that, and I knew it was real. I knew it was real, and at the same time, I had no idea where it was coming from. What was it? And then I looked where it was coming from. It looked like it was coming from me. And so I got so scared. I decided to even without deciding, I just made steps to get out of the tub. I was just going, I just stepped over the edge of the tub. And then I realized that it was moving with me. That rainbow of light was a part of me. I couldn't separate myself from it. So then I had that choice. I knew I have a choice of just screaming as loud as I could and running out of the bathroom and whatever, just release my fear and my terror at that time, or to conquer my fear and stay and see what's going to happen. And that's what I decided to do.
Yeah, and you stayed to conquer the fear.
Exactly. I stayed, and I said to myself, no matter what happens, I'm going to watch this. So that was a big moment, because it was really terrifying to see something that's kind of like you see a science fiction in a movie, and it was real. So there I was. I sat down. I crossed my legs. I sat down the other way in the tub, facing the window, and I was just sitting there waiting. And pretty soon things started to happen. So
why don't you tell us a little bit about each step that happened, because there was quite a few.
right,
It's quite lengthy,
right.
but try to give us
Yes,
a little rundown on each little step that happened through that
right.
process.
Yeah, sure. So I actually consider the fact that the finding that emptiness was actually the first step in the process, but I didn't know that. So the second step, which actually you can say that the first step was the magic of that rain tube of light. You see, at this point, this is the area of the first and second chakra, and this is the Kundalini energy right here in the middle, that rainbow tube of light. So the very first steps were I could not distinguish between them that well. I didn't know anything about it, and it still seemed like, except for the rainbow, for the tube of light, it seemed still kind of within the range of normalcy, right?
Was the tube of light, was that coming out of the lower chakras that you just showed?
It was coming out of me. It was coming out of me. Yeah. So it's the Kundalini woke up and it was moving about, and I was just watching it. We all have that. Each of us has that. It's just
Right.
asleep.
Yes.
So anyway, the next step after I was mesmerized and terrified, and then I decided to conquer my fear and watch. I saw images, like little video clips, and I saw a child that I could look at from up above. I looked down at the little child, and I somehow could get into this child's mind in a way. I could follow its thoughts, and I could see its reactions to events that were happening in its life. So I looked at that. I started to follow one event after another, and I couldn't tell. The child was standing back to me, so I couldn't tell. I couldn't see the face. But as soon as I went into, psychically, somehow I just saw that child going through all kinds of emotions and making decisions about its own life.
Was that child you? Okay, so
That
you
child was me.
so it was similar to a near-death experience that I've heard different levels of people going through different levels. So it was very similar to that then.
Yes, and it is, and it also it says that Buddha himself, when he had his experience of Kundalini rising, he also went through the images of his life from the beginning. And the reason it is like near-death experience, because during near-death experiences, Kundalini leaves the body, and then it comes back later. I mentioned that in my book briefly in a paragraph, but that's what happens. So what happened after that, as soon as I realized that that was me, automatically, I didn't do anything about it. I automatically was able to follow all of my thoughts from the time when I started thinking, from the time when I was that little child. Each thought I could follow. It just happened by itself. And I realized that there are like main trains of thoughts we have that have to do with our relationships, with our dreams, with our plans, or with our work, or whatever it is. Each of us has not too many, but several trains of thoughts. And so I was following, my mind was naturally following all these thoughts. I was just there observing it and experiencing it, and each thought I could tell I was following these thoughts, understanding them completely, and they all came to the present moment. This is why spiritual teachers talk about being in the present, being here and now, right. The power of now of Eckhart Tolle. It's right. Because...
That's funny you say that. I'm reading the book right now.
Right.
Yeah, I am. I'm reading the book right now. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
So it was.
Yeah. So this is why
it was similar to the power of now. Then, is where you were at.
Well, yeah. This is because Eckhart Tolle at that time was in the third chakra. His right. mind, his consciousness was in the third chakra. And I'll explain later why some of us don't see all the dimensions like I was able to. For some, it's a very fast flow of energy, just a very powerful surge, and you end up here.
Right.
But I had this incredible luck of being able to see every stage of the process.
Well, that was a major spiritual awakening is what you were going through, and seeing each step of the way as you're going through it. So a better understanding and an ability to teach from
yes.
being in that exact level of consciousness that you were in, which most people, when they have a spiritual awakening, it just, they can't really explain it other than all of a sudden things are different. With you experienced
excellent, you got it.
You experienced one chakra, which you didn't even really know at that time what was going on, right? You didn't know that there was a chakra. You just knew.
I didn't believe in chakras.
Yeah, so you didn't.
I didn't believe. I heard, but
yes.
I thought, come on, that's just too much.
So you didn't even know really what was going on, and so this story that you're telling is a spiritual awakening, but a step-by-step process that you were taught by spiritual beings, I'm assuming, other than yourself.
Well, yeah. So that process is natural to each human, and it's been known for thousands of years. And all religions and all spiritual teachings are based on that process. Only sometimes the process doesn't go all the way through, and other times our spiritual experiences depend on singular openings of specific chakras.
Right.
And I will talk more about those specific chakras as we go through the process. Now I want to finish the third chakra, because all of my thoughts came to the present time. I compare it to the bubbles of oxygen traveling to the surface of the water.
Wow.
And so everyone has the ability to actually clear the mind, which is the third chakra. And the third chakra is the mind, but we, in the physical way, in the first chakra, which is the material world, we have it in the brain, right? That's where the mind is. But in the subtle body system, the mind is in the third chakra, in the plexus, solar plexus area. So we all have the ability to clear up all of our thoughts from the time that we started thinking, started making decisions.
So we all have the ability to clear them out, but you're going to explain on how to clear these out, or
yes, I'm going to go over about different kinds of practices. We know about many of them. We don't know, what I'm teaching is not known because of the fact that I had the ability to see each stage of the process. Right. But teachers, spiritual teachers, have been teaching for thousands of years about clearing the mind from thoughts, exactly. About being in the present. And the way to do it is, there are ways of training the mind, focusing the mind. Focus is the main thing.
Yeah, give us an example of that, like a training or a focusing of the mind to become in the present moment, because I think that if you can do that, and we're talking about Eckhart Tolle here, if I'm pronouncing his name right, but if we can do this process of being in the now, do you think that is going to start the awakening then?
Well, yes, because once the whole thing about Kundalini rising, and the process that leads to spiritual enlightenment is about Kundalini energy, which is asleep at the bottom of the spine, but affects mainly these three chakras. Chakras are vortexes of energy vortexes, but I actually discovered that they are dimensions of perception. So they're always there. They're always there. We, through having the chakras open, are able to reach those dimensions. If the chakra is closed and underdeveloped, we can't reach them. We can't reach the dimension that well. So those dimensions are harder to reach for us, but these three, we have them going all the time. Right. It's because this is the material, emotional, and mental. These three dimensions we're busy with, and they're intertwining. As far as our reactions, we can emotionally react to the material world and emotionally react to our thoughts, and vice versa. The thoughts can affect our emotions, so it's all intertwined. So as you asked if clearing the mind is the path. Right. To spiritual enlightenment, because all of the chakras have to open, not just clearing this one and clearing this one. Clearing the first one is basically being healthy. Right. If your body's not healthy, then you have to clear that first chakra through all kinds of healing methods. Right. To clear the second chakra is what I did explain already, and I'll repeat it later, the process, the steps of clearing the emotional chakra from lingering emotions, because they compile one on top of another. We have these emotions in us, and something happens that reminds us of that emotion, and it's more and more and more, and I had such tremendous emotional baggage when I was suicidal. I couldn't deal with it. It's only because I was able to control it, to step out of it after knowing what it was, really seeing through it, being in it, having it over me like a big black cloud. I was able to see what it was, feel it completely, and step out of it. And what that does, you see, this is the energy of Kundalini. This is the consciousness. This is our individual unit of consciousness. When that consciousness is kind of slumbering, asleep, half asleep at the bottom of the spine, it wakes up sometimes in dangerous times, in survival times, because Kundalini, this is the essence of all there is. But in our physical body, once Kundalini, once our individual unit of consciousness creates the body, physical body creates everything, we kind of self-create it. Once that energy creates the body, it becomes automatically, naturally, instantly survival, sexual, and creative. These are the three attributes of our consciousness in the body. So that consciousness is able to unite with the ultimate consciousness, which is called, has all different names: God, Spirit,
universe, the universe.
Universe, yes. All that, the source, right? There are so many names for it, but it's that ultimate consciousness that's everything there is. And actually, that consciousness is everywhere, even in the speck of dust, in the snow that I see outside my window. It's everywhere. Everything is consciousness. We, as individual beings, we are individual units of consciousness that have the subtle body and have the physical body that is just a part of the material world.
Right.
So there are all these dimensions of perception that we experience life through.
Right.
We connect on certain vibration with emotionally we connect with that dimension on certain vibration. We mentally in the same way. So going back to where I was at in the bathtub and having all my thoughts leave. So there were little steps to that too, when all my thoughts were gone, and that is actually the truth.
Well, that's living in the power of now is where you were at.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And everything was gone. So that was the third chakra that you were at?
That's the third chakra.
And then what happened in the fourth?
In the third chakra, all your thoughts are gone, and then you still are, right?
Right.
Without the thoughts.
Yes.
And then your ego, which is what's called the ego, all those concepts that you carried with you for as long as you live or longer, all these concepts, all that you thought you were, is gone. You don't have to have the responsibility for that anymore. It's all gone. It left me like a dried up, thick shell of mud that disintegrated and fell away. Then what you are in the state of, I was actually levitating at that time. I could see myself lifting up, sitting on the bottom of the, sitting at the top, at the bottom of the tub. I could feel no weight, and that's very characteristic for experiences with the third chakra opening. It's the sense of incredible joy, elation. You just feel such a joy and such lightness. You don't feel your weight. So there I was, and I started to, there were some processes that I had, thoughts processes that were, like I had thoughts, well, there was new thought coming in. I could observe a new thought coming in. And I realized that our minds are perfect. They can figure everything out. We are like, our minds are perfect computers. They analytically can reach any results we want. And they're goal-oriented. So the mind is always going after a goal. From that state of being elated and being in this incredible lightness and clarity, like omniscience, knowing everything, but not knowing everything, all the details about everything, but knowing that you have access to everything. You can reach any kind of you can go, if there is anything you want to figure out, you can do it. But there was nothing to figure out at that time because I was free from any concerns.
Right.
And that's when I started to see that there is like a golden specks of light or gold coming down on me, and I was sitting in that. It was just falling on me like this shower of little golden speckles. And as I was experiencing that, which you can imagine is just like incredibly wonderful feeling, I also realized that I have support, that there is something supporting me, that I have something around me. I knew there was no one around, but there was some kind of presence.
Right.
So this is when my consciousness was moving up to the 4th chakra. And this is the major thing. This is very important. Our mankind right now, it's at the point of trying to leave, trying to clear the 3rd chakra and go reach the 4th, because then with the 4th dimension opens up, and that dimension is love. In order to actually truly get it, some of us have the 4th chakra open already. Some of us are loving people who care about others, who care about others being well, and it's just natural to us. But there are many people who don't feel loved, and they don't think that love is actually always there. And this is the thing about Kundalini rising, where chakras open up, and you discover that these dimensions exist always, and love is always there. So I had the experience of that presence I was just talking about actually coming closer and closer and closer. And it was like a lover, but it wasn't that physical. It was the lover that actually touched my heart. I could physically tell.
Wow.
It really, my heart was touched. My heart was physically touched. There was a moment when it was touched. And I fell in love. And I knew that the presence fell in love with me. So it was that incredible sense of finding love forever, regardless of anything. And I realized that I am loved forever, and that it's never going away, it's always there. And I realized also, as I was contemplating it, sitting there thinking about it, that Jesus Christ and Buddha and all great spiritual teachers were teaching that love because they received it too.
Right.
It's not a fantasy. It's not kind of a social obligation. It's nothing like, it's not artificial in any way. This is a real dimension of perception. It's always there. And so in my teachings, I teach how to dwell in that dimension of love. There are exercises for that too. So there I was, free from my thoughts, free from everything that I thought I was, completely free, clear, completely clear. My mind was completely clear, so powerful. And there I am, loved, and realizing that problems in the world come from a lot of them come from that fact that people don't feel loved. That we think that we must have that partner, that we must have this or must have that to be loved. No, the love is always there. So that was the discovery of the fourth dimension. And as I was contemplating that, excuse me, I'm going to turn off my heater because it's a little too warm for me.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, I don't know if you can tell the difference in the sound, but...
No, actually, it's good. Everything's good. Okay, so now we're at the heart chakra. So we're moving up now into
we're moving up to the fifth one. Yeah.
Okay,
so I'm sitting there. Yes, did you have a question about that?
No, I don't. Actually, I'm speechless because I've already read your book, so I know what you're speaking about. The problem is that I don't understand. I mean, I don't think people are going to understand really what they're looking for is, I mean, they're hearing the story, but what they're looking for is, what can I do about this?
Right, you know? Yes,
So
I understand. I always tell the story in short at first, just because each of us is able to have that experience. So some people have some of the experience, some people have the third chakra open sometimes.
Okay.
We all have the emotional thing going. We all have emotions back and forth going, and good and bad, good and bad, good and bad, right?
Yeah. So I see exactly what you're doing. So you're trying to explain a little bit about possibly a person may have had one of these experiences, and you're explaining really all of the experiences of the Kundalini right now.
Right, I'm explaining the process because some of us have the upper chakras opening, especially artists have the upper chakras open, not necessarily these ones. These ones are congested. And that's our problem, that they're congested, the emotional and the mental. So this is kind of the introduction I usually do so people know where I'm coming from, because I'm not different to anyone else. I'm the same. I just happen to have the experience that was told me the step after step. And so that's why I'm explaining it in that way.
Right.
So here we are, clear mind, emotions are in a neutral state. They're not. The Kundalini went through it. As it goes through it, that incredible energy, it's magical. We all have magical power of Kundalini, of the individual unit of consciousness. As it goes through these chakras, it clears them out.
Right.
Once it clears the emotional, the mind, it starts clearing the mind too. And so we start feeling wonderful right here already.
Right.
But it's not because we are thinking about, like most of the psychology teachings are, that, oh, you don't think about bad things, think about good things. It doesn't matter what kind of emotion it is. We just don't want to experience negative emotions. That's why we fight with them, or we try to get rid of them, and we want the good emotions. But the secret of the spiritual enlightenment and the process that leads to it, it's to clear out that chakra from any emotion, to stay in the neutral.
Right.
So it's not to distract yourself. That's like a pacifier. Yeah, you gotta stay neutral. So that's what spiritual teachers will always tell, if they really know what they're talking about.
Okay, so we're going into the fifth chakra now. Is that
the fifth one? Okay. So I was just sitting in that tub, giving love to the world. The love was pouring out of me, and I was in that state of simply reaching all the people that are feeling not loved, lonely. It's such a common thing, that people feel lonely, that feel not loved. And I was just pouring love.
What an amazing experience. I think everybody would want something like this to happen. And it happened so quickly to you. So you were in this amazement of pouring out love to all these people, and what happened from there?
And then I started to see that actually I first started to hear music. And the music was getting louder, and it was just this incredible music. Once I started to listen to it carefully, it was like all these sounds that were really, either really, really low, like, the Buddhist chants, or angelic high octaves that
Right.
we can't even humanly do. It's just, the sounds were so high, and it was like this whole orchestra. And I hear the music, and I'm going, who's playing music at this time of the day? It was about 2:30 p.m.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Yeah.
In the house, because there was no one in the house.
Right.
There were seven or so tenants in the house. I had the attic on the top of the house, and no one was in the house. And I was like, who's playing music? And then I could see also that the air around me became blue, bluer and bluer, this dense blue, kind of like my shirt right now.
Oh, wow.
And so I realized that the music is all around me. It's not in the house. It's not someone playing it. So I'm just listening to it, and it was so beautiful. I was in a trance from that music, but still I knew very well what was going on. I'm sitting at the top, music is all around me. The air is blue. And then after a while, I started to see the figures scrolling down, from up scrolling down. And the figures had robes on. And they looked like, I could tell some of their faces were familiar and some not. And they're moving slowly in front of me. And each of them, as they were reaching my eye level, they were looking at me in this kind of acknowledgement, like saying hello. And it was just this gaze contact for a little while, and then they keep going down, and the next one would come. I don't know how many I saw, but there were probably, from what I remember, there were at least 20 that I could lock eyes with for a moment, and then there were many others. I kind of understood that they were also the carriers of the sound, but there were many, many more that were outside of my vision at that time. So I had no idea who they were, but I knew that I was introduced into a group.
I think that they call them ascending masters. I mean,
Ascended masters, yes.
So that's what just from what you're explaining, that's what I think that it sounds like to me.
Yes,
it may not be, but
this is what I found out later too. And so this is the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is the dimension of connection and sound. This is how we exchange energy. This is how we connect with other beings, whether there be ascended masters or there be angels, archangels, there be spirits or beings from other planets or other civilizations in the past or future. There is no time here. The time is only here, actually here and here, and then there isn't, the time factor doesn't work in the in those dimensions. So in the fifth dimensions, you have Akashic records, where you can reach to any information that you desire. You can just get any information, and if you are able to access the Akashic records, you can get it. This is what psychic people are able to do.
Right, exactly. Right.
They can see into it because they have access. They may not know what's going on, but they know that they see something from the past, something from the future.
Right.
They see where somebody lost the keys, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's that dimension of the fifth. There's a throat chakra. That dimension is of performance, music, dance, connection, exchange of energy. These are where the guides are, our spiritual guides, animal spirits, or whatever, guardian angels. This is where that connection with them is. So as you can tell, it's a very rich, beautiful dimension.
Right.
So there I was, experiencing those wonderful people coming to people. Beings, masters. They came to acknowledge my process. And I knew now that I'm not alone experiencing all that. They know what's going on. And then the next stage happened, which is the opening of the sixth chakra. Well, again, as I said, with artists, either musicians or visual artists, will have those chakras open, and they will have visions. And visionaries and people who are intuitive healers too, they have that chakra open. They see, for example, this picture of the subtle body. That's the picture seen from the sixth chakra, which is otherwise called the third eye. So when I had that chakra starting to open, I suddenly saw a vision. And I could not understand it at all because I have never seen anything like it.
And what was that vision?
In the bathtub.
I saw laser-like beams in an equal distance to each other, disappearing into the horizon, and the lines were crossing at a certain space. It was just this grid of laser lines, and where the lines were crossing, I saw a little light everywhere. There were little lights. Those lights were pulsating, and they were kind of blue, and they had pink and white inside. And I looked at that, and it was on the very dark background. You see, this color is this dark, this blue, but this one is usually even darker purplish black color. So it was on that background that I saw those lines. And I see these lights pulsating all over, and it's just going into infinity. I had no idea what it was, but here's something. As I said, my mind was very clear, strong and clear, because there were no thoughts and there were no emotions disturbing. There were no thoughts from the past lingering and, doubting and making you think, oh, what are you, crazy? Are we seeing this? And so on. So I could see that, and then there was another process that some of the spiritual teachers were talking about, which is called self-inquiry, which is opening the seventh chakra. But that process starts already here. So the mind is very carefully observing what's going on. And as I came here, you can ask questions in this area. when your consciousness goes up here and your third eye opens, you can ask questions. And these are the intuitive questions that get instant answers. Because this thinking is kind of is analytical, linear thinking, but this thinking is instant. The moment you ask the question, you just barely finish the question, the answer pops in. So when I asked the question, what is it? It took a little moment before the answer came, but it came out of nowhere. I would have never think that because I never had anything to do with it. It said, it is the matrix of creation. And I realized that all those little lights that were at the crossings of the lines, this is each individual light. That this is how we are coded. Our life is coded in that little light. Each life. That's the past and future. It's everything that has to do with your own individual life. It's already there. As we live through, we are experiencing it. This is hard to understand, but
yeah, it is. It's very hard.
Yeah, we're experiencing life as it already has happened.
Yep.
And we react to it, but it's already going, right? It's already happened. Now we just keep on trying to catch up with our shadows. That's how I put it. So anyway, this is a very rich dimension, so it's not possible to just go through it within just like one meeting like that. But what my next question was, is my life there? Right? I mean, you think this is all the lives, but am I there in there too? And within instantly, I just could just dive into that dimension, that matrix of creation, and searched for a while, just going into in that space of the matrix of creation, and suddenly I came upon my own life. So I got kind of moved and well, wow, this is my life. And then so when you realize that, I thought, well, this isn't so fun. I mean, we're just like being farmed on the grid, right? And I didn't like that much, but that was just a moment, because I also realized that together with our lives being created in the matrix of creation, the aspect of time, the time actually, not just the aspect of it, but the time itself, it's also created. It's there in order for us to understand our lives, to follow our lives, to have some kind of story in our life and learn from that story and more. So once I understood that, all that became clear. The illusion of reality became clear. And you might have heard, and some of the people who are watching this may have heard that spiritual masters realize that the reality we observe and experience is an illusion. And so it becomes clear in the sixth chakra. When it became clear, something else happened. These are the last stages of the Kundalini rising, so it may be hard to understand, but if you just remember this kind of the stages, it's easier to see it as a complete process and where it leads. Because at this time here, our souls self-realize. And this is the self-realization and spiritual enlightenment are often called the same. It's like the same thing, but actually self-realization happens before the spiritual enlightenment takes place. Because in the time of when in the time of self-realization, our soul self-realizes. That means simply that we realize that we exist beyond our material world, and our existence is immortal. The body is mortal, and the reality we perceive changes, and it's all in transition, and it's all just images that we observe, but the soul is immortal. And soul goes through eons of times and just keeps on creating life for us. Each soul creates our own life story. So once you realize that, this is when your soul self-realizes, you know you're immortal. Well, that's important to know. And once you know that, your process of self-inquiry, if you remember, that starts here and basically develops the seventh chakra. In that process, you ask questions. So once my self-realized, the soul says, I am. You might have heard that the God says it, that something says it, but it's the soul. Once it self-realizes, it says, I am. I am beyond any material evidence. There doesn't need to be a material evidence for the soul to exist.
Right. Wow, what a story. What a story of your experience. So is there anything that you can tell people on this experience? I mean, do you have workshops, or where can they learn this particular?
Yes, I do.
So where do they find you?
It's quite easy to find me. I am always on my website, which is www.moniquerebelle.com. And you can contact me through my website. You can take a look at the classes that I teach, programs. I'm preparing an online program. It's not ready yet, but I'm preparing it where you'll be able to go through all those stages. And I teach, I also give free once a month meetings on Facebook Live.
Okay.
So you can check that. I have a group that it's called Our Multidimensional Consciousness on Facebook.
And how do they find that on Facebook? What is it under?
It's Our Multidimensional Consciousness.
Okay, so that's how they would find it.
Yes.
Okay, can you...
Multidimensional. I know it's a long word, but I couldn't find a word that
multidimensional consciousness.
Explain it in a short way.
So that's how they would find you on Facebook. Okay.
Yes.
So they can find you on all these different, on your website, on Facebook, and then through your...
I'm on Instagram too. I'm on Instagram also under Monique Rebelle and Monique Rebelle author too.
Okay.
I have two Instagram pages.
Well, I mean, this is some incredible, actually, it was more so a story, and that's what a great deal of your book is about, is your story about what happened, but not just that, but information that you gathered after this occurred to you. So obviously you went in and gathered this information from various sources to come up with the Transcendence Calling. Am I correct? Or are you just going based on your story?
Actually, what happened, I was able to, once we go to the end here, so this is where soul self-realizes, but it's still not complete. It's complete once the soul can merge with everything there is, and that happens happens after the process of self-inquiry is completed. You ask a question, and it happens to be the last question to ask.
Okay.
And then
did you add, I'm just trying to, I think we're getting a little off track here. Did you ask, I'm just trying to find out, when you're going through each of these chakras and you're kind of explaining a little bit about your, what your experiences are, what is it that someone's going to be able to do? I mean, I think they're going to get very overwhelmed by hearing this story and not really understanding on what they can do. That's why I asked that it was really important for them to know more about this by going through your website or going on Facebook, so they could understand, because it's, for me, and I was telling you this before, and I think it's important that everybody know out there that it's very overwhelming. I mean, even for me,
of course,
to be sitting here right now listening to this, it's it gets to the point where I can't really even, my brain can't compute anymore because it's too much information.
Normal, yes.
So, is there anything else that you would like to speak about at this time? Okay.
I do make it very clear, actually, but I just wanted to complete the whole.
Okay, so go ahead and do that.
Just explain that this is not all, and then there is the last moment is of uniting, and that happens in complete light. So there is, and then you become aware of the fact that you are creating your reality. We all are creators of our reality as this reality is being around us. So this is something that I just wanted to that's just the completion of the process. And how I'm teaching by approaching each chakra separately.
Okay.
Each dimension separately.
That would make sense.
And most of us have a problem with the second and the third. I do not teach a lot about the first chakra because that has to do with being healthy, living a good, healthy life that involves good physical exercise and good nutrition. Just these two things. Nutrition and exercise. Exercise could be different for everyone, so it's very individual. I cannot prescribe to anybody to do yoga, a certain kind of yoga, if it doesn't work with their predispositions, with their system. I can do certain kinds of yoga, but not every kind of yoga.
Right.
And so is everyone else. Emotions are simple, and I teach about emotions, and you got to work on it. So for some it's going to be easier, for some more difficult. Some people have heavier emotional baggage, some lighter. So it's approached individually. If there is a small group, I can address each person in a small group. But talking to a large group of people, anybody who's going to view this, all I can say is that most of us, 99% or more, have the emotional baggage that's residing in the second chakra. And I help how to clear that with one specific exercise, but there are also other ways of clearing the emotions. But there is one exercise that's most important. The third chakra also is very individual. Some of us focus better by playing a game. Others can focus better by doing actually a physical exercise. Others, like me, for example, I'm a visual artist. I can focus better painting. If I paint, my mind stays there, it doesn't wander. And that's the key to, as you said, Zoe, being in present.
Right.
Is to focus the mind. And training the mind, I'm saying training the lower chakras, the second and the third, and the first one too. You can train your mind like you're training your dog. you can simply, it may take some time, not everyone is able to do it right away, but it's just step after step, ability to focus better and to actually gather all of your mind. It seems like it's crazy, so many thoughts, right? But you can gather it right in front of you with your will. Because we are not our minds and we are not our emotions. We are spirits. We're individual units of consciousness that have magical, tremendous will. We can train our mind. We can train our emotions. And this is the basis of what I'm teaching.
Okay.
Because
so
we have those chakras congested.
Okay, let's.
And the upper ones we need to cultivate.
Yeah, okay, so let's kind of, because we're getting ready to wrap it up, so can you go through each one a little bit quicker here for us?
Yes, of course. So cultivating the fourth chakra is cultivating love. And that doesn't mean loving what we choose to love. I love this and I hate that. No, it's loving everything. And that's a practice that I can't describe in a couple of sentences, but that's also something that I'm teaching. So teaching how to dwell in love, because in order to feel love, we need to give love. So some of us have no clue how to do it, others are very good at it. So it's also individual approach. I also read, going back a little bit to the third chakra, I also read charts, personal in the natal charts, because part of the third chakra, focusing the mind, is also learning about yourself. And people know about themselves somewhat, some very little, some a lot, but the astrological chart shows also tendencies, predispositions, gifts, and things that one should pay attention to in their lives in order to know who they are. So this is called know thyself, that practice. The fifth and sixth, it's all practicing certain arts, or even just liking, watching, observing, looking at things. That's the sixth chakra. The fifth one is listening to music, listening to sounds, playing music, maybe singing, playing instruments, but also tuning into the vibes of the environment. That's also something that, I'm saying, tuning into the vibes. There is a way of doing it. And so depending on the person, some of us have that chakra open more, some less. For someone who has no connection with, does not feel too sensitive to music, for example, although a lot of us do, right? Music changes our lives, it inspires us. If it doesn't, then there are ways of learning it, ways of learning about the sound, ways of learning about feeling the vibes, feeling the vibration of sound that's healing, because sound is healing. The sixth is vision, so it's intuitive healers too, and it's looking at things, visual understanding. I'm teaching that. But as I said, this is the base. It's harder to, unless you are an artist and somewhat, have predispositions to know about understanding symbols, understanding visual symbols, understanding concepts of religions or spiritual symbols. All that is in the sixth chakra, so there is a lot to it. Gods, deities, and archetypes are there, tarot cards, divinations. So there is so much in there. We're going one chakra after another. We're not just jumping into the sixth one, because even artists who maybe have the sixth chakra open and can create beautiful artwork, they may have, and probably do, a lot going here because they're sensitive and they have the second and third chakra congested with too much in there. And the seventh one, that's contemplation, that's philosophy, that's observation and witnessing. It's a different mind. So I can't teach much about the seventh chakra without going through the practices about the third one.
All right. Very good.
Because it has to do with a different mind.
Very good on the explanation. Well,
Thank you.
Is there any little last blurb that you'd like to say? Because I know we've gone over for about an hour now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So, is there anything else that you want to close with before we,
yes. End? I'm just going to say that yes, the process I described may be overwhelming, but it is really a very important process, and each of us is able to go step by step of clearing up the lower chakras by training them and cultivating and developing the upper ones, so we become much more in control of our lives, in the sense that we are in tune with our lives. And all, like me, myself, I was suicidal and I had tremendous emotional baggage. All that was gone, completely gone after my experience. And this is how we can work on the second chakra to step out of the emotion that bothers us, and as we are not feeding it, it's gonna diminish.
Okay,
and
you're just
our individual energy is gonna clear the chakras.
We need to kind of wrap this up, and so we have very, very little time, maybe about a minute left. So I think I think everybody gets the gist of it and understands, and I think that they really need to learn more.
Yeah.
By going to your website and listening, and I know you have videos on there, correct?
Yes, I have many videos.
Right, so that they can really get in depth and listen to what this is, but we've gone so far over time, I don't want to cut you off.
Okay,
but
thank you so
I
much.
think that we've discussed so much. Anyways, today we have Monique Rebelle, and don't forget, it's Transcendence Calling. And don't forget, you can also get this on Amazon.com. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
I really, really appreciate it. I know we kind of had a little bit of a little combatants going on there, because this is just we're just doing a hoedown videos. This is just whatever happens when we're here. We never know what's going to happen. And so we're going to end with that. But today we had you on, and I just want to say thank you so much. And so, Transcendence Calling.
Do it.
Appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me.
Talk to you later.
Be
Thank
it.
you.
Bye.
Bye.